Now, of course, the error bars on this are quite large, but if an advanced Ice Age civilization existed, where do you think it was? Where do you think we might find it one day if it existed? And how big do you think it might have been?
Well, this is where I'm often accused of presenting a God of the gaps argument, that I think there was a lost civilization because there's lots of the earth that archaeologists have never looked at. Of course, I'm not thinking that. These are very special gaps that I'm interested in. And I'm interested in them because of all the curiosities and the puzzlement that I've expressed to you before. It's not just because there are gaps in the archaeological record. It's because those gaps involve places that were very interesting places to live during the Ice Age. And they specifically include the Sahara Desert, which was not a desert during the Ice Age and went through this warm, wet period when it was very, very fertile. Certainly some archaeology has been done in the Sahara, but it's fractional. It's tiny. And I think if we want to get into the origins, true origins of ancient Egyptian civilization, of the peoples of ancient Egypt, we need to be looking in the Sahara for that. The Amazon rainforest is another example of this. I think the Sahara is about 9 million square kilometers. The Amazon that's left under dense canopy rainforest is about 5 million square kilometers, maybe closer to 6. And then you have the continental shelves that were submerged by sea level rise at the end of the Ice Age. Now, it's well established that sea level rose by 400 feet, but it didn't rise by 400 feet overnight. It came in dribs and drabs. There were periods of very rapid, quite significant sea level rise, and there were periods when the sea level was rising much more slowly. So that 400-foot sea level rise is spread out over a period of about 10,000 years, but there are episodes within it, like Meltwater Pulse 1b, like Meltwater Pulse 1a, when the flooding was really immense.
How big do you think it might have been? And do you think it was spread across the globe? So if there were expert navigators, do you think they spread across the globe?
Well, the reason that I'm talking about the gaps is I don't know where this civilization started or where it was based. All I'm seeing are clues and mysteries and puzzles that intrigue me and which suggest to me that something is missing from our past. And I'm not inclined to look for that missing something in, for example, Northern Europe, because Northern Europe was not a very nice place to live during the Ice Age. I mean, nobody smart would build a civilization in Northern Europe 12,000 years ago. It was a hideous, frozen wasteland. The places to look are places that were hospitable and welcoming to human beings during the Ice Age. And that, of course, includes the coastlines that are now underwater. Of course, it includes the Sahara Desert. And, of course, it includes the Amazon rainforest as well. All of these places, I think, are candidates for, quote unquote, my lost civilization. And because I think, largely from those ancient maps, that it was a navigating, seafaring civilization, I suspect that it wasn't only in one place. It was probably in a number of places. And then I can only speculate. Maybe there was a cultural value where it was felt that it was not appropriate to interfere with the lives of hunter-foragers at that time. Maybe it was felt that they should keep their distance from them. Just as even today, there is a feeling that we shouldn't be interfering too much with the uncontacted tribes in the Amazon rainforest. Although, interestingly, some of those tribes are now using cell phones. That possibility may have been there in the past. And only when we come to a global cataclysm does it become essential to have outreach and actually to take refuge amongst those hunter-forager populations. That is the hypothesis that I'm putting forward. I'm not claiming that it's a fact, but for me, it helps to explain the evidence.
So that speaks to one of the challenges that archaeologists provide to this idea, is that there is a lot of evidence of humans in the Ice Age, and they appear to be all hunter-gatherers. But like you said, only a small percent of areas where humans have lived have been studied by archaeologists.
That's right. Very tiny percent. And even a tiny percent of every archaeological site has been studied by archaeologists too. Typically 1 to 5% of any archaeological site is excavated.
I mean, that's why Göbekli Tepe fills my mind with imagination, especially seeing it as a time capsule. You know, it's almost certain that there is places on Earth we haven't discovered that once we do, even if it's after the Ice Age, will change our view of human history.
Yeah.
Do you think there's going to be a place, like what would be your dream thing to discover, like Göbekli Tepe, that says a definitive like perturbation to our understanding of Ice Age history?
Some kind of archive, some kind of hall of records. There's both mystical associations with the hall of records at Giza from people like the Edgar Cayce organization. There's also ancient Egyptian traditions which suggest that something was concealed beneath the Sphinx. This is not an idea that is alien to ancient Egypt. It's quite present in ancient Egypt. So far as I know, nobody has dug down beneath the Sphinx. And of course, there's very good reasons for that. You don't want to damage the place too much. But let's call it the Hall of Records. I'd love to find that. But I think in a way, that's what Göbekli Tepe is. Göbekli Tepe is a hall of records. You know, it's interesting that just as I've tried to outline, I hope reasonably clearly, that the three great pyramids of Giza match Orion's belt in 10,500 BC, just as the Sphinx matches Leo in 10,500 BC, 12,500 years ago or so. Pillar 43 in Enclosure D at Göbekli Tepe contains what a number of researchers, myself included, regard as an astronomical diagram. Martin Sweatman of Edinburgh University is brought forward the best work in this field, but it was initially started by a gentleman called Paul Burley, who noticed that one of the figures on Pillar 43 is a scorpion, very much like we represent the constellation of Scorpio today, and that above it is a vulture with outstretched wings, which is in a posture very similar to the constellation that we call Sagittarius. And on that outstretched wing is a circular object. And the suggestion is that it's marking the time when the sun was at the center of the dark rift in the Milky Way at the summer solstice 12,500 years ago. That's what it's marking. And it's interesting that the same date can be deduced from Pillar 40. Of course, it's controversial. Martin Sweatman's ideas are by no means accepted by archaeology, but he's done very, very thorough, detailed statistical work on this, and I'm personally convinced. So we have a time capsule at Göbekli Tepe, which is memorializing a date that is at least 1,200 years before Göbekli Tepe was built. If that dating of 11,600 years ago proves to be absolutely the oldest date, as it is at present. The date memorialized on Pillar 43 is 12,800 years ago, the beginning of the Younger Dryas, the beginning of the impact event. And then Giza does the same thing, but in much larger scale. It uses massive megalithic architecture, which is very difficult to destroy, and a profound knowledge of astronomy to encode a date in a language that any culture which is sufficiently literate in astronomy will be able to decode. We don't have to have a script that we can't read, like we do with the Indus Valley civilization or with the Easter Island script. We don't have to have a script that can't be interpreted. If you use astronomical language, then any astronomical literate civilization will be able to give you a date. The Hoover Dam has a star map built into it, and that star map is part of an exhibition that was put there at the founding of the Hoover Dam. And what it does is it freezes the sky above the Hoover Dam at the moment of its completion. And Oscar Hansen, the artist who created that piece, said so specifically that this would be so that any future culture would be able to know the time of the dam's construction. So you can use astronomy and architecture to memorialize a particular date.